Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. We are presenting on the annual Cooperative Agreements Training for fiscal year 18. We have a couple new developments for fiscal year 18 guidance, one being that the guidance is now available on the web, which helped alleviate a lot of the error messages that we received last year due to recipients such as yourself not being able to open the templates embedded into the guidance. Hopefully you have found this helpful. Second item is notification. We are still using EasyFed grants. Hopefully this year will be a little bit smoother with the processes, having been that we've all been working within the system for the last year. And third, just one constant, we wanted to express our commitment to all of you to provide the best support possible. The slide you'll see here are some timelines for paperwork submissions for our award processes for fiscal year 18. The first being the February 28th deadline, which is the deadline for submitting the work plans, financial plans, and your indirect cost rate agreement if you will be requesting an indirect cost reimbursement. Submit those to your program manager no later than February 28th. The next date is March 16th, and that's the final date for submitting the pre-award letter request for the awards that begin April 1st, which are the majority of our umbrella and traceability awards. And the third date is April 1, which is the start of the performance period for fiscal year 18 awards. And just the last date there for your reference is the expiration of the pre-award letters. We are entertaining just one pre-award letter request this year, without the multiple extensions that we have worked through the prior years. The next slide here you'll see is the current SPRS agreements team, and you'll see each of your grant specialists there. If you're new to working with us, and you'll look for your district, and your grant specialist name will be listed there, and feel free to reach out via email. And if you need any of us, we're always available regardless if we're your designated grant specialist or not.
The grant administrative official, grant processor, and signatory official are for your use within EasyFed grant system. Your organization needs to work within these three roles. Your organization must have at least one grant administrative official and one signatory official. But it is the best practice to have at least one backup in each role to ensure documents are not delayed. Also, please note the best web browser to use within EasyFed grants is the Internet Explorer. It is recommended not to use Chrome or Firefox when accessing EasyFed grants. Before applying for an award, please ensure your organization has registered into SAM. Your organization must be registered in SAM in order to receive payment from Treasury. To register in SAM, you will need a DUNS number and a taxpayer ID number. Also, you will need to renew your registration annually. Please be aware SAM is free of charge. You should not be paying to register or renew your registration in SAM. We have provided websites to the Dun & Bradstreet webpage and SAM webpage. This slide pertains to the Intergovernmental Review of Federal Programs, or commonly known as SPOC process. Not every state participates. However, your state does participate in this process. A copy of the response from the SPOC must be included with your application package when applying to the opportunity. Also, be sure to answer box 19 of the SF424 application for federal funding. You may recall this box was locked last year, but it is now unlocked for editing this year. When making your selection, please choose option A or B. Option C is not a valid choice. Also, veterinary services falls under the CFDA 10.025. This slide shows the awarding process. Different colored boxes is more for internal purposes. Keep in mind, this process will start after a work and financial plan has been approved. When creating your financial plan, you must consider all three of the following. Cost must be allowable, reasonable to accomplish projects, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, not used to meet cost sharing or matching of any other federally funded program, and adequately documented. Costs also must be allocable, treated consistently by the application, incurred specifically for the project, beneficial to the project, and necessary to the overall operation. Lastly, costs must be reasonable. The amount does not exceed what a prudent person given the same circumstances would expect to incur. Cost types. These different types of costs are direct costs, indirect costs, cost share, cost matching, and pre-award costs. Direct costs are costs for personnel, fringe benefits, travel, supplies, equipment, contractual, and other. The next type of costs are indirect costs. There is a statutory cap on indirect of 10% for nonprofit organizations and universities and colleges. Nonprofits also include private and public organizations. A de minimis rate of 10% may be applied in an organization never had an indirect cost rate agreement and received less than $35 million in federal funding. If claiming the de minimis rate, please contact your program manager as there are additional processes to approve this rate. Please include a current signed indirect cost rate agreement with your application when applying for an award. Cost sharing refers to the portion of the federal assisted project not borne by the federal government. Cost matching also refers to the portion of the federally assisted project not borne by the federal government, and it directly compares federal and non-federal participation dollar for dollar. Example would be a 50% match of federal funds means that the recipient must provide 50 cents for every federal dollar. A 100% match means one recipient dollar for every federal dollar. Pre-award costs are costs incurred to the date the agreement is fully executed. Recipients must submit a letter to the APHIS signatory official through the program manager to obtain approval to incur costs. The letter must include length of time up to 90 days for which these costs are being requested, a justification explaining programmatic need to begin incurring costs, and an estimate of costs to incur during the pre-award period. Reimbursement of pre-award costs is contingent upon a signed notice of award. Risk assumption is on the recipient should funding not be available. Also, as a reminder, the deadline to submit your pre-award letter is March 16th. Allowable and unallowable costs. Define an explanation of allowable costs. Here are your resources: 2 CFR Part 200, authorizing legislation, and agency guidance. Examples of unallowable costs are compensation and travel of federal employees, land acquisition, promotional outreach and giveaway items, vehicle purchases, symposium, conference, and meeting honoraria. Also, please use the program-specific guidance in the Cooperative Agreements Guide to determine if there are any additional restrictions to costs. Information technology acquisition. Purchases of $25,000 or greater that includes hardware, software, and support services may require an acquisition approval request or AAR to be completed. If it is determined that an AAR is needed, estimated 2-week turnaround for the review process. The equipment request form can be found in Appendix B9 of the Cooperative Agreement Guidance. An equipment request will need to be completed for cost of equipment with a unit price of $5,000 or more. Also include the completed equipment request form when submitting your work and financial plan. Travel costs should be specific to the activities in the work plan. Follow your state written travel policies when calculating travel costs. If there are no state travel policy, then federal per diem rates should be used to estimate travel costs. Out-of-state travel policy. USAHA and regional AHA meetings should have no more than 2 attendees per state agency combining umbrella and traceability agreements. Additional justification needs to be provided to support an increase in attendees or to raise the budgetary cap. Justification will need to be approved by the APHIS signatory official. Travel cap on conferences and meetings for the umbrella, that's $10,000 or 7% of the total project. For traceability and avian agreements, it's $5,000 or 7% of the total project cost. Training and workshops are not included in the cap. Registration fees are not a travel cost and should be included in other costs.
Work plan development. When developing a work plan narrative, it should provide an overall purpose to justify the need for the funds requested, identify objectives indicating the ultimate result trying to be achieved, and outline the activities to demonstrate how the objectives will be accomplished. Remember to add in how you are going to measure your success for each objective and how you are going to share the results with APHIS-VS. For example, use of the avian Excel spreadsheet to report testing. In summary, the work plan narrative explains the what, how, where, when, and why. Within the guide, a work plan template labeled Attachment A and a work plan formulation table labeled Attachment H are provided as guides on how to develop your work plan narrative. Please keep in mind that the language in the template can be revised, since some items may not apply, whereas others may need to be added. You will work with your program manager to negotiate what activities are appropriate for your agreement. Given that this is a cooperative agreement, the proposals should address activities conducted by both you as the recipient and VS. Although Section 4 in the guide, Program Goals and Objectives, describes activities by type of goal, such as surveillance, diagnostic testing, preparedness response, and education outreach, we recommend that your work plan narrative is sectioned by commodity and includes an individual commodity budget. For example, the avian health section of your work plan would address any surveillance, testing, preparedness response, and education and outreach activities and include an avian health commodity budget. These individual commodity budgets would then be rolled up into the overall financial plan. For FY18, we are continuing to require that a percentage of effort chart be included on the first page of the umbrella work plan narrative. The chart will reflect the estimated time that is being spent on various activities by commodity, as illustrated in the sample provided. As a result, this chart may not be representative of how the funds are spent. The percentages should total 100%. Also note, if the percentage of effort chart is not included within the work plan narrative, we will request revision of the work plan to incorporate it. Financial plan development. The financial plan is specific to activities in the work plan, showing in monetary terms what resources are needed to carry out activities. Either within the financial plan or within your work plan narrative, calculations on how you arrived at the costs being charged should be included. I will be going over by cost category in the next couple of slides what sort of details regarding costs we will be looking for. The approved financial plan must match up to the SF424A sections that will be completed as part of the application package in EasyFed grants. Lastly, there are two financial plan templates provided in the guide this year. The first is Attachment B, to be used with the umbrella Avian Health or Cattle Health Awards, and the other is Attachment B.1 for the Animal Disease Traceability Awards. As you will notice, this is a new template and is required when submitting traceability work plans. Now I will walk through the cost categories and what our expectations are when reviewing the work plan and financial plan. First, for personnel, identify the title of the positions, the number of employees per position, and the number of hours to be worked and the rate of pay per hour, or an annual salary rate with the percentage of effort being applied. For fringe benefits, what percentage is being applied and what benefits are covered under that. For travel, indicate the number of travelers, the title of the meeting, conference, or training, the dates and location of the meeting, conference, or training, the cost of transportation, lodging, per diem, and number of days, and for field work, estimated mileage to be traveled plus cost per mile. Equipment. Per the federal definition, equipment has a unit cost of $5,000 or greater. Anything less than this should be listed under supplies. In addition, for equipment, please provide a description of what is going to be purchased, including the unit cost and quantity. Identify the purpose of each equipment item and how it will benefit or be used for the project. For supplies, list the type of supplies, such as office or specific reference books. Indicate how the purchase benefits or will be used for the project, the quantities needed along with the cost per item, and make sure these supplies are not already covered in your indirect cost rate. Contractual, such as lab contracts to include cost per test, leases on equipment, professional services, and space rental that is used solely for the project. In the other cost category, these would include other direct costs not itemized elsewhere, such as testing conducted in-house to include cost per test, maintenance costs of vehicles, car washes due to biosecurity, printing, postage, and registration fees. Things to keep in mind when developing your work plan and your financial plan. Please check all your calculations and make sure costs outlined in the work plan narrative correlate to costs in the financial plan. If there are any discrepancies noted during work plan review, your work plan will require revision. In addition, please ensure that the APA's share of the project does not exceed the amount awarded. If you have indirect costs, then we may request a copy of the agreement during the work plan financial plan review. Please ensure that you have a current agreement in place and that you are applying the rate correctly based on the terms of your negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. Recipient cost share or cost match is not required except for a 40% match for brucellosis eradication activities. However, if you choose to incorporate these costs and it is approved as part of your work plan financial plan, then it will be incorporated into your agreement terms. You would then report any actual recipient costs or expenditures on the SF425 financial report, and we will be verifying that you have met the agreed upon amount by the end of the agreement. Lastly, keep a file of your supporting documentation to show how costs were determined. This slide and the next show a sample financial plan with some of the details I mentioned. It's important to note there needs to be one final budget represented by the overall financial plan that includes all costs. Be sure to include indirect costs, if any, applied to the total project costs and not just APHIS's share. Also, if you have outlined costs or included individual budgets within your work plan narrative, please check that the amounts correlate to what is reflected in the overall financial plan. Some other required documents that will be part of the award process are forms that will be completed within Easy Fed grants include the SF424 application for federal assistance and the SF424A budget information, which will match up to your financial plan that was approved. Forms that will be completed outside Easy Fed grants and attached to the application include the SF424B assurances, certification regarding lobbying for awards exceeding $100,000, the SFLL disclosure of lobbying activities for awards exceeding $100,000 when there are activities to disclose, the SPOC letter, if applicable, and a signed negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, if applicable. If you have a change in your indirect cost rate agreement during the period of performance, please provide a copy to us for the file. You could also attach the current indirect cost rate agreement to any claim submitted which reflects the new rate.
Reports. This is a partial view of what you see when you log into Easy Fed Grants. In order to complete your report, you must access them through the actionable items tile on your home screen as illustrated here. The performance and financial reports are automatically generated by Easy Fed Grants 30 days before the reports are due. The performance template is identified as PE and the financial template is identified as FI. Individuals selected as the administrative contact in the application packet and all GAOs will receive the generated reports in their actionable items tile. If you need more administrative contacts than is allowed on the application, please contact your district point of contact or district grant specialist. Additionally, individuals can be added to the agreement when it is drafted for signature. Once you have completed the report, it should be routed and signed by a certifying official. This chart illustrates the Easy Fed naming convention for reports, which are named according to the calendar year quarter. This is because EFG is an enterprise system that is being used by many different agencies and cannot be tailored to reflect our agreement cycle. Your award face sheet will outline what the agreement quarters are and when they are due. Even though Easy Fed Grants names reports with the calendar year quarters, we will continue to sequentially name quarters based on when your agreement starts. Starting this year, we have developed a standard naming convention for the reports, and we are requesting you use the following naming convention for all performance reports and attachments. It's the fiscal year, the state, the recipient, agreement type, the PE or the FI, and the quarter, and then in parentheses, the type of report. We request you attach the narrative and any additional reports to the Easy Fed Grants generated performance report instead of using Block 10 performance narrative. Once the report is attached, double-check the reporting period and agreement type. Once the report is completed, route to the certifying official for signature. Once the report has been accepted by the program manager, it cannot be edited or no additional attachments can be added. For avian reporting, only use the Excel spreadsheet provided in Appendix C to report avian testing. Report data only for the current quarter, not cumulative. Some of the information will be filled in and other blocks will need to be completed on the generated form. This is a cumulative report. Ensure that the amounts shown in the form reflect cumulative amounts, including the information for indirect costs. If you have cost share match that have been approved as part of your agreement, reflect your share of the expenditures in the recipient share section. The first person who opens the report becomes the only individual with access to the report. If they are a GAO, they can reassign the report to another individual. However, this can only be done once. Any request for an extension of time to submit reports must be justified and made in writing to APHIS authorized representative official or program manager before expiration of the initial 30 or 90-day period allowed for submitting the reports. Extension of reports are subject to the program manager and, if allowed, shall be provided by the program manager in writing. Even if the extension is allowed, Easy Fed Grants does not allow for the processing of claims until all required program reports have been submitted. Also, no applications for FY18 will be considered for an award if there are any outstanding performance or financial reports from previous fiscal years. If the agreement becomes active after the first quarter report should have generated, the due date listed on the generated report will be inaccurate. Refer to your award face sheet for the correct due date. You cannot make edits to searched reports. Reports are only editable through the actionable items tile. Both financial and progress reports must be current for a claim to be processed. Easy Fed Grants does not automatically generate claims. When you are in Easy Fed Grants, select Create Claim from the left-hand menu as shown in the screenshot. Only one claim at a time can be processed. Show actual expenses in the requested amounts by cost element section of the claim, and submit claims in chronological order.
During the course of the agreement period, occasionally revisions or amendments are needed. Your organization is permitted to rebudget to meet unanticipated activities, and you may make limited program changes to the approved project by notifying the program manager. The most common requests we see are budget shifts, particularly shifts over 10% of the award. Cumulative shifts over 10% if the award is $150,000 or more requires prior approval. Usually, shift requests for general purpose equipment or supplies are not allowed in the last quarter of the award. Programmatic changes requiring prior approval include change of the scope or objectives of the project, change in key personnel only as specified in the award, when no work will be done on the project for 3 months or more, and when an extension is needed to the performance period. When a no-cost extension is requested, a justification and a revised SF-424 will need to be submitted to the program manager via email at least 10 days prior to the end of the agreement's initial period of performance. Ensure you include the new requested end date in your justification. An extension will not be granted solely to allow more time to spend unused funds. Budgetary changes requiring prior approval include inclusion of costs that require prior written approval according to the CFR, transferring of funds allotted for participants in connection with conferences or training projects, contracting out, subgranting, or otherwise obtaining the services of a third party to perform activities which are central to the purpose of the award, adding additional funding to the agreement, changing cost share or match, and cumulative transfer among direct cost categories exceeding 10% of the current total budget when the award exceeds $150,000. As mentioned, the most common request we see is a budget shift request. These requests should be submitted in writing to the program manager via email and should address these 5 questions. What is the amount of the shift? Why is the shift occurring? What cost category is the funding being shifted from and to? Will the original objectives still be accomplished with this shift? And will this shift affect the scope of the agreement? Here is the workflow for an amendment in Easy Fed grants. Please note, not all amendments require all of these steps to become active, and some steps may occur outside of the Easy Fed grant system to initiate the amendment, like no-cost extensions or budget shift requests discussed in the previous slides. Closeout and retention. The system will send automatic reminders to the recipient 90 days and 30 days prior to the expiration date of the award. Your organization has 90 days to submit all final reports and the final claim after the agreement expires. If there's an unobligated balance of federal funds listed in line 10H of the final financial report, the process to deobligate these funds will be initiated. Once the agreement is closed, all records regarding the agreement should be retained for at least 3 years. Here are some links to useful resources. The first link is to the fiscal year 2018 guidance. The second link is to the Code of Federal Regulations. The third link will take you to the Easy Fed Grants recipient portal, which also contains a tab for training materials. Finally, the last link will take you to the General APHIS Terms and Conditions. These are the standard articles you agree to when signing an award fee sheet in Easy Fed Grants. If you have any questions or comments regarding this training, please direct them to the email address you see on your screen now. Thank you for joining us today.